please welcome Monica Proothi.
And to be moderating this phenomenal group of leaders that we have on the panel today. The Government of New Brunswick, not to be confused with New Jersey, we mean Canada, is here today. They've gone on quite a transformation journey across HR, payroll, finance, and they're continuing their journey. And they are here to share their perspectives and learnings with you today. So I'd love to welcome to the GNB leadership team, Dave, Cynde, Adrienne, and Mallory. Excellent. Well, why don't we start off with some introductions?
Absolutely. Thanks, Monica.
Yep.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We're really excited to share our journey with you today. My name's Dave Nowlan. My title is the ERP Business Solution Owner. In that role, I am the lead business person that's in charge of the transformation that we're going through right now. Cynde?
Hi, I'm Cynde Faulkner, and I'm the Finance Business Functional Owner. So everything finance comes through me.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Dean. I am the HR and Payroll Functional Owner.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mallory Fowler, and I'm the Change Management, Communications, and Training Lead for the project. So sometimes I get to make sure people get really cool ERP socks, and sometimes I have to have really difficult conversations with them.
Excellent. Well, Dave, why don't you provide a little bit of high-level overview, scope of the project, what you've been up to the past couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Monica. So at the Government of New Brunswick, we decided probably about 3 years ago that we were going to do a transformation. We were going to change the way the government does finance, payroll, HR, supply chain. We're going to impact about 30,000 people within the core of government. Our scope is, like I say, it's the core of government, which is your departments, your transportation, your social assistance, departments of finance. In addition to that, we're looking at school districts. So there is 7 school districts in the province of New Brunswick. And little extra challenge for us is 3 of them are Francophone and 4 of them are Anglophone. Our scope also includes 2 community college systems, 1 Francophone and 1 Anglophone. So we're really changing something that has been the same way for a long time. Some of the people that we're impacting have been doing things for about 30 years the same way. We've made a commitment that we will leverage the solutions that we're putting in, and we will change the way we're doing things, as opposed to trying to change the solution so it delivers so we can keep doing what we've been doing. Thinking behind that was really that the solution is used worldwide. It's developed based on best practices and experiences that people are seeing every day. Who are we to say that the way that we have done it is better than the way the solution has been developed? Easy said, not very easily done. We have solutions right now that are in place across the organization that by the time they were implemented, they were automatically out of support because they have been customized so much. So these are the types of things that we're dealing with. We have legacy systems all across the organization that were developed in silos, that were built to meet a specific need for a specific program in a specific department. Somehow we have to bring all of this together. We are paid out of essentially 4 different payroll systems right now. One of those systems is resident on a mainframe, and that's one of the better ones. The payroll system that supports all of our education system runs off computers that they buy on eBay because it will only run on Windows 97. So as you can imagine, there's no interconnectivity. There can be no networking of it for security purposes. So we have quite an arduous task in front of us. Layer on top of that, New Brunswick is an officially bilingual province in Canada. So that means we have to deliver the solution in dual languages, not bilingual. The user has the constitutional right to use the solution in their language of choice, French or English. So if you layer on old processes, old systems, language requirements, and let's face it, people generally don't like to change anyway. So As I've mentioned, we're about 3 years into our journey. We figure we have about 3 to 4 years left. And we're really looking forward to talking to you a little bit about it today, what it means to us, what we've accomplished so far, what some of our challenges are, and more excitingly, what some of our successes are. Monica and I were talking just before we came up on the stage, and one thing I want to mention for those of you who are about to go on this or just starting to go on a journey like this, it's so easy to get bogged into the issues that you face because there will be a lot. It's very challenging to recognize the successes that you've had and celebrate those successes because they're there. But when we're using a phased approach, as we'll discuss in a little bit. When you're there, you're in depth implementing something, then you're automatically in operational support, and then at the same time, you've got the next one that's coming up. So it's really challenging to keep yourself fresh, keep your client groups fresh, and make sure that you avoid that change fatigue as much as possible, because it will be there, and it's very, very real and powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that we're here celebrating the success, which is great. And I know you've weathered the storm of the pandemic and you continued through the pandemic. How did that affect your transformation?
Our transformation had started probably about a month before the pandemic. IBM is our implementation partner. They were on site for a week. They flew out of New Brunswick on Friday the 13th of March, and essentially the province shut down on the 17th of March. So we instantly went into, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And the province, as you can imagine, delivers a lot of essential services to the residents of the province. So there was a conscious decision by the leadership in the government that we would shut down services that weren't essential so we could stream all the necessary human resources to support what had to keep going, keep people safe in healthcare, to make sure essential services were provided. People were moved to areas that they didn't traditionally work in. So the project was closed down for a couple of weeks. And I say a couple of weeks because what goes along with that movement of people to different areas is understanding what people you have, where they are physically located, and what skills they have. And if you think back to what I was saying about our systems that we have in place, you'll notice I didn't mention HR systems because we really didn't have any. We had payroll systems. So the clerk of the province called myself and my counterpart on the IT side on a Sunday and said, we have to get things going again because we need good information on our people so that we know what to do, who's out there, who can do what, and we can redeploy them as necessary. So it really was quite a shock. And then when we did start going again, it was, okay, how are we going to do this? Because previously, as we first started, we were going to do like the global design and all that stuff, bring people into the big room and solution against requirements. And you think back a couple of years, those sorts of things stopped happening. So the first thing we had to do when we decided to start it up again was completely look at our deployment plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to work in this new world? We were the first organization in the Government of New Brunswick to use Teams to any extent. So as the pandemic rolled in, we were the guinea pigs. So we had to, you hear about agile implementation. We don't necessarily use textbook agile methodology, but we have been and continue to be very agile in our approach. And it started right from day one. So then we sat down and we had to decide what's important. Well, we had to have meaningful HR information. And then we thought, well, the bedrock really of any significant ERP system is your general ledger. We had to do a complete remake of our chart of accounts. So that's what we decided to start with. Then what are we going to do next? Well, we have to be impactful. So we look, well, everybody needs money, everybody needs payments, governments pay money all the time. So we thought, okay, we're going to take our core Government of New Brunswick, the departments, the transportation, the social assistance and whatnot, and we're going to change the way they do accounts payable. So that was our second big jump. We had to look at things where we could gain efficiency in a short period of time to get those early and quick wins. Our accounts payable processing was centralized, so that played into that decision. We'll do this with a centralized group. The organization that runs that piece is one of the sponsors of the project. It's called Service New Brunswick, Central Service Agency, and as well as Finance and Treasury Board, which is where I came from. Then we worked with our partners at IBM and decided, how are we going to deliver this differently? We came up with a plan. Then we looked at it and we say, well, a big piece of this, as I mentioned before, is around payroll and HR. There was a fairly large project with the Government of Canada to redo payroll, and it was, I won't say a colossal failure, but it gets a lot of press. 4 or 5 years out, people are still trying to get their paychecks straightened around. So we had that specter hanging over top of us. So what we decided was we have these two organizations, Finance, and we have Service New Brunswick. We're going to implement HR and payroll there first. So we're going to do it to ourselves before we do it to anybody else. The other advantage that had was in a risk management approach. We have over 20 collective agreements within our scope. That chunk of work had one. So it allowed us to refine our processes around one collective agreement before we started running around with multiples. So that was really the process that went on. There's a lot of thinking very quickly. And because of the leadership provided by IBM, the leadership provided by the 3 colleagues here, and the 5 that are sitting down there, I think we've done pretty darn well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that with a lot of our clients, reprioritizing, redeploying the resources for where there's the most critical tasks, activities, things that need to get done, projects that need to get done. And like you said, you talked a little bit about where do you get started. You started where you had sponsorship. So starting with sponsorship, stakeholder buy-in, that's exactly what we've seen. So it's commendable that you've done that. What I would love to understand a little bit, Adrienne, maybe from you, can you share some of the synergies between HCM and finance?
Yeah, absolutely. When we started, traditionally in Government of New Brunswick, our finance and HR teams are very separate in silos. That's the way they work. And when we started this project, we also started with a finance silo and an HR silo and a payroll silo. So they're all separate. And we started to run into issues. And so we've really now, in the release we're working on, started to plan the HR and payroll releases together. We sit together in meetings. And so even if you think it's not going to touch on finance or you don't think it's going to touch on HR, oftentimes it does. So having everyone together in the same room, having the conversations, you just make sure you're not overlooking something important. So we're getting there.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as we are moving forward and we're bringing more functionality into the system, we're finding more opportunities where we need to improve our synergies and make sure we knock down those silos. So as we move forward, we're really trying to fill those gaps, and we're talking a whole lot more than we were early on when we were implementing in silos, because what we were doing didn't need to be as interrelated. And the further we go, everything is flowing together, and we're seeing where we maybe didn't quite catch something quite right. So.
And I think with that, Cynde and Adrienne, you guys are working with organizations in the departments, in the school districts that are siloed too. Their HR teams and their finance teams don't work together. So you two have to lead those folks to start having discussions while you're having discussions. So it's really even getting them to work more collaboratively, not just on the project.
Yeah, I would say that's an example of when we first came up and Monica talked about our transformation. This really is a transformation. It's making a lot of people uncomfortable. It's pushing them and asking the tough questions. It's making them think differently. And people who have gone through things similar to this before are used to, well, we'll just change the solution so we can keep working in our silos. And we have support all the way up the organization say, no, that's not going to happen this time.
And I'm hearing a lot about silos, and we see that often too, where our clients are operating in different business units and everything is very siloed. What are some of the other challenges that you've faced throughout this journey, aside from the pandemic?
A lot of the
Start with Adrienne or
yeah,
Cynde?
sure. Yeah, go for it, Adrienne.
Okay. One of the challenges we faced early on was getting our project resourced appropriately. We wanted to have the business lead as much as possible, so finding resources who have the right skills, and also their organizations being willing to let them come and join us, because it's a full-time job plus. So that's been a challenge, but we did get resources in place and we hit the ground running, and we continue to scale up, so we continue to need more resources. So just bringing in resources as we need them and getting them ramped up has been a challenge, but we're getting there.
And along with those resources, we have multiple streams within each of our areas. So I've got accounts receivable and accounts payable and fixed assets and project costing. And as we started going, we would realize maybe one of those things is really too big for one person, and we had to break things down a little bit farther than we initially had planned. So then we would bring in resources a little bit later into the game, kind of midstream, that would have to kind of really hit the ground running and pick it up and keep on going. But it was really important that we realized that it was too much and that we really needed to split things up in order to continue on with our timelines. And we have very aggressive timelines. So we're trying to work as effectively as we can within government, which can be challenging. Other challenges that we do have, though, include just even the interrelationships of sometimes the Oracle modules and the way the data flows through them. We used descriptive flex fields in a couple different places in our general ledger and accounts payable and project costing. And now we're finding we have to carry them through even to time and labor within HCM. And that's becoming quite a challenge to have the data flow without having to build custom integrations, which we are having to build to make sure things flow through. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us. And then also, continuing on, reporting has been a challenge for us. Like Dave said, we've been in a system for 30 years, a common financial system. The system that they were using before this was EBS Financials, e-business suite, which was highly customized from their previous, I think, homegrown system. And the reporting was very granular, and you could get details out of the general ledger, like invoice information. And in Fusion, we said we have a summary general ledger, which people don't like. They want their details. They've got to go to subledgers to get their details now, and that's a whole other ballgame, and people are having to really get their head around that, and that's been a challenge.
I think another challenge is around the approach that we've taken. As I mentioned, you notice when we introduced ourselves, you've got an HR professional, you've got a CMA, and you've got a chartered accountant or a chartered public accountant or professional accountant now.
Dave.
Yeah, we've changed that in New Brunswick. GMB, when we've done projects like this historically, the business has gone to the IT group, the developers and whatnot, and said, this is what we want. Give us a call when you're done. And we have taken a very business-first approach. It's business-led. It's to meet business requirements. I sat around the cabinet table at one point in time, and one of the senior folks there says, well, I've seen IT projects like this fail before. And I said, if you are entering this as an IT project, we might as well stop right now. And that's really the approach we've taken. We business leads, we work in very close partnership with our IT resources across the organization. Business can't do it by themselves. IT can't deliver what business wants if business isn't sitting at the table. And I've seen that in my former role in the Office of the Controller. We would go in to do reviews of financial systems before they went live and look at it and say, well, none of these requirements were met. And it was, well, we forgot to tell the IT group about that. And I said, well, where were you on a day-to-day basis? Well, we were doing our job while they were overdoing this. And that creates challenges, and we're very demanding on our client groups. We are telling them we need your best business people to be involved here, or else you're not getting what you need. That's been a huge challenge.
Regularly engaging our subject matter experts who we have throughout the whole organization that work with our team and our stream leads and our business analysts is a big time commitment from them, which is very challenging. It's not a corner of the desk thing, but they still have a whole other job they have to do, so it can be quite difficult at times.
And with that, Cynde, because of the phased approach, we end up hitting them over and over and over with new functionality from the accounts payable module to now planning and budgeting. So while they're starting to get more aware of what Fusion can do and how the project works, they also are experiencing that fatigue, and they're starting to understand the level of work, effort, and change that their organization is going to go through just on the finance side and then eventually in HR payroll. So describing that impact to the stakeholders, whether it be a manager or a supervisor who's managing a crew that's paving a pothole, has been monumental to get that penny to drop or that special moment that they really see the impact to them. On the finance side, we're really starting to see it now because of the phased approach. They've lived it, they've tested it, they've trained it, and they went into that hyper care operational day-to-day business. But now they're more clever and probably sometimes more challenging, Cynde?
Yes. They ask lots of good questions now that they've been through it, so it's great. It helps identify gaps and problems earlier on, which has been a really big benefit to us in our releases that we're going through now. We have 6 ongoing releases right now. One of them went live on Friday, so we've got lots happening.
And I think another piece is, I mentioned earlier about people not liking to change. Mm-hmm. And this is an enormous change. I don't know about governance in your jurisdiction, but we didn't do change well as a government. We rarely, if ever, on a project of this magnitude had any dedicated change resources. Mallory's on the stage for a reason. She's leading our change group along with training and communications, recognizing that for us to be successful, we have to work with the people. Mm-hmm. We have to recognize their fears and their constraints and the demands on their times and hold their hands through the process and say, it's all right. So Mallory, with the support of senior leadership in government and all of us, we have a change team, but change is everybody's responsibility on our team. And we make that very clear. Everybody on this project team should be able to answer change type questions because people are scared. People will want to make sure they get paid. They want to make sure that their jobs aren't eliminated. So we have to help walk them through that change. And we have built a team. And there are releases that we're not as deep in technically yet, that our change team is already reaching out to the leaders in those organizations and starting the discussion now.
I'm hearing 2 kind of key themes here, resourcing, and then I also heard data, and then partnership where it was a success factor. But if we look at the challenges, and that's really what we see with our clients, feeling change fatigue, I have a day job, how am I gonna keep doing this as well? Is my job gonna get replaced by robots, and then what happens to me? There are a set of things that drive human willingness, and then there are a set of things that drive human ability. And as we think about human willingness, that's incentivizing, having leadership support, empowering our people, and then there's things that drive ability of, do I have the right operating model in place? Do I have the right skills, the right tools and accelerators? And then as we think about data, I like to think of it as your operating model is a blueprint to your home. You have to have data at the foundation. You've got to get that plumbing right first, and then you add on a layer of technology and architecture, and then you've kind of got these rooms that are intelligent workflows on how they flow together. But then you've got your people who now have to operate in their new home, and every home is unique, and every organization is unique. So if you have someone like my mom trying to figure out, okay, cable's gone and now I've got to use Hulu or Netflix, and she looks at me like I have 3 heads because she doesn't know how to do it. And that's how a lot of the workforce then feels. There's a new tool, there's ERP, and there's an implementation, but there's so much more than just that implementation. It's taking the workforce along for that journey with you.
Yeah, that's really the case, Monica, and that's what we try to do. We don't do it great every time, but we do it better every time. And that's our commitment to people. We're not going to get it right. We'll tell them that right up front. We're not going to get it right. You're going to make mistakes. We're going to do something wrong. But we're not going away. We're going to be there to support you. We're going to make sure that we catch you when you stumble. And that's what we try to do. You talk about data, our vision statement for the project is timely access to information that drive decision making. To provide the leaders of the organization the information they need. We have thousands of systems and all kinds of data. Can't always get to it. It's not always reliable, but we got all kinds of it. So we've talked a little bit about process change. We've talked about people change. We also have to start treating data as an enterprise asset. That is huge. That is the power, and that is what makes something like this work worth it. The Government of New Brunswick has never had any kind of a data governance program. We are starting to build that within the ERP program, and it will ultimately, we feel, and talking to the OCIO, it will become the model for data governance across the organization. So we're changing everything everybody does. We're changing how they do it. We're going to hold their hands through it. And at the same time, we're going to make data an enterprise asset. And that's a big transformation. Even things that you think, okay, we're essentially going from EBS to Fusion, one Oracle product to another. But now all of a sudden, our operational support people don't have hands on the database. If there's an outage, we can't reach out to people immediately and say, this is the issue, we'll have it up in an hour. That's terrifying to people, right? Our data team, which we are building, because really a true data team doesn't exist right now. Our data team is starting from scratch with data standardization, data cleansing. And that will be an ongoing effort as we move forward. We will get it now good enough to run operations, but then the fun begins. Then we get to really improve it. We get to really build proper reporting, analytics, visualization. These are the things that's going to take this to the next generation for the organization. And ultimately, taxpayers don't want to keep giving governments more money. I've always said government doesn't have money. They look after the money that the taxpayers give us to run everything. The better information, the better decision making we can give, the better value the taxpayers get for what they're giving us to fulfill our fiduciary duties.
And I think, Dave, just on, we do help people through the process. I wouldn't say we always hold their hand, but we definitely set expectations. If something can't be met, we're very upfront that that will not happen, because we don't want to take people through a false journey, or else we don't have the trust and we don't have the respect and the credibility to actually make those mistakes and still rebuild those partnerships that we need to have with our key stakeholders. So I don't think we fully hold hands, and I'll challenge you on that one, but we do make the path clear on what it's going to be.
I think that's one of our biggest reasons for success, is we are honest with people. We will tell them, this is going to be hard. We want to hear what you want, what you need, but we're not always going to do it, because we're looking at it now across the enterprise, as opposed to the systems that they're dealing with, again, like I said earlier, is purpose-built for one program in one department. That's the only way we can get data and information to the point where it truly is an enterprise asset. And yes, when people back home watch this and they say, what does he mean, hold our hand? They don't hold our hands. That was a good call out. That's very true. We support, we are honest, and we support them.
You've touched on a number of the key success factors here: partnership, transparency, honesty. Are there other success factors as well, as you kind of taken this into account and throughout this journey?
I'd say leadership support has been key to our success. And Mallory, I think regular communications to folks. I don't want to steal your thunder, but
Steal away, because it always sometimes works and
Right.
sometimes it doesn't.
I think regular communication at all levels of the organization as we go through is really important. So people are concerned that we're just going to show up at the last minute and implement this solution. So we bring them along on a journey. They're part of the process, and they take ownership more easily that way.
Yeah. And I think with those communications, Adrienne, the team is very receptive to the feedback. When the training or the communications or something didn't quite hit the mark, these folks and those folks over there and all the other ones pivot on a dime, and they really make it about the people when they can, and to make it resonate and be impactful so that those folks can do their jobs better. So that also makes the implementation in a phased approach, makes each release better. Every time we get better, we know more information, and they adapt and adjust.
Yeah, really, I took something from our project manager the first time that we went live, and it was painful. It really was. And he and I were having a pretty frank and open discussion, and he looked at me and he said, "This is our first go live. This is the absolute worst we're ever going to be going live. And we will get better every time." And that has borne out. We really have. We've gotten better, and that's a testament to the team. Because amongst us are some of those people who've been doing things the same way for 20 years. But everybody on this team is open to change. And agile, I think Mallory mentioned, and Adrienne did as well. A great example of that was when we first did conference room pilots for our GL release. Yeah. And as I mentioned, we have language requirements, dual language requirements. And we were running on Teams, again, very new at Teams, this brand new tool, and nervous and conscious of our language requirements. And we delivered that session in a bilingual nature. We did a piece in English, then we did the same piece in French. And we went through like that. And the people in the session were blowing things up, saying, "We can't follow this is too awkward." And we thought, okay, we got together as a leadership group. We said, what are we going to do? Because this is essential to build this solution. Somebody said, well, I've read about this Zoom thing, and I think you can get simultaneous interpretation on Zoom. Our next session was 2 days later.
It was the next day.
Next day? Okay. 24 hours later. We had no Zoom licenses. We had no interpreters scheduled. We did not have an integrated slide deck. Within 24 hours, all that was in place. And we delivered our next session. The people delivered in the language of their choice, but everybody was able to use Zoom to get simultaneous interpretation. And that was really our really, besides pivoting for that COVID thing, that was really our first demonstration within the team of how we can work in an agile manner to deliver the requirements in a way that resonated and met the needs of the users.
I have to ask, what's next?
Oh, what's next? We have 6 implementations ongoing right now. We have budgeting and forecasting, for our entire population, school districts, community college, core government. We just went live with accounts payable for the legislative group, and we are going live in 2 weeks with accounts payable for the community colleges. We are also doing, at this point in time, fixed assets project costing for a couple of parts of the organization. We are working on an HR pay and employee expense implementation for 2 of our school districts, 1 in each language. We are going live to get rid of, hopefully, J.D. Edwards payroll processes for 1 piece of the organization. And we are going live with HR pay and employee expenses for our Department of Transportation, which has about 2,000 people and about 10 collective agreements.
And many, many legacy systems that are very, very tightly woven together.
We got an estimation very recently around what it's going to take to alter those legacy systems just so it can accept fusion coding. And the response we got back, it's going to take a full team about 3 years. So now our task is, we can't press pause that long. So how are we going to do this and deliver them what they need to keep running their business while we're doing it? So that's what's in flight right now. After that, we have 5 more school districts. We have to deliver the finance pieces to all 7 school districts. We have to deliver accounts receivable inventory to the whole scope. We have to deliver procurement so that we can finally have an end-to-end procure-to-pay process across government. We have really no system that tracks encumbrances. We have no system that has the approval on the front end with the purchase order. Right now, about 100% of our procurement is done with 1 to 5% of our procurement is done with purchase orders. So we want to get that to what it should be. So we have a long road ahead of us. We have to do all the finance implementation for all 7 of the school districts. So again, we have a long road ahead, but we have a team, some of which are here, a lot of which aren't, that I have no doubt are up to the task. Some people say to me from time to time, like, how do you do it? I said, it's easy for me. All I got to do is clear the path for these folks and let them do their job, right? It's because they know, they've been in the business more recently than me. They have the street cred out there with the people that they're dealing with day to day. So it's a lot of fun. It really is.
Well, the work you're doing is commendable, so thank you. We do have a couple minutes left. If anyone has questions from the audience. Oh, over here. All right, we've got a mic coming over to you. Moving across the back. There she comes. Marathon runner over there.
So hi, I just wanted to ask, thank you for sharing amazing story. And you said before that you're transferring your finance from all kind of systems to the Fusion. And my question is about how are you handling the history data with the data from the Fusion in reporting, in everything. If you can say something about this.
Sure. We did our first implementation was our general ledger, which we implemented
2 years ago in December.
2 years ago at Christmas. It was like the week of Christmas. And when we did that implementation, we also fully redesigned our chart of accounts, which was super fun. And our older system is e-business suite, like I mentioned earlier. So we had to map all of the chart of accounts from that system to the new system because that system is still in play because we're doing a phased financial implementation. So we did that, and as part of that exercise, we determined that we were going to convert the data from our fiscal year goes April to March. So from March, the last period of the second prior year, the full prior year, and then the year to date within the year that we were working. So we worked very closely with our data migration team to do that, and now we have a daily integration that brings over the general ledger at a summary level from our EBS system into Fusion every night. So that is how we do our. That's our historical data, and then we didn't convert any data from our accounts payable release. We just went go forward and we brought over credit memos. So that people could clear their payments. And with the reporting, reporting has continued to be a challenge, as we mentioned, because it's a different approach. And the detail's not in the general ledger from all of those EBS transactions. So they have to go back there to get anything related to journal entries. We haven't really done intercompany journal entries across the government because we have some legacy systems that are in place that are pulling data from a different source and they can't do journal entries yet. So we've got lots of weird little nuances that make some challenges with our reporting.
And we've built a number, and we knew this was going to happen going in, we've built a number of integrations that will be throwaway to help us facilitate that. Yeah. We've really, as much as possible, taken the approach that we will migrate the minimum viable amount of data. And ultimately, we will be building some sort of a historical data repository that people will be able to report of. But even that, we will challenge people to say, what information really has to be there? And try and break people of that gut reaction to say, well, I need everything, right? That's one thing I think back to. A lot of words could describe it, but I know when we put ads out for Change Manager, the word disruptive was used in the ad. Join our disruptive team. That's really what we are. We challenge people both outside of the project, our client group, and we challenge each other on a daily basis. And I think that's a real key to success.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, we did also convert suppliers. Any supplier that had a payment in the previous 2 years, I think we brought those forward so we wouldn't have to do manual setups whenever those supplier payments came through. So just one other piece of data there.
Other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Cynde if you could double click in on the change management required going from like that descriptive general ledger to the more summarized one, and any perceived inefficiencies for your end users and how you manage through that.
So that's a constant and ongoing problem that we're dealing with on a very regular basis, because it is such a change for users to not be able to go and run a detailed general ledger report and see within this account, I can see all my journal entries and I can see every specific invoice I paid in the supplier name and the accounts receivable and receipts. Like, it's been a big change management effort with Mallory, and it is definitely ongoing. And I think once we get farther down the path and we have the EBS transactions not coming in as a integration on a daily basis, it'll be easier to keep telling people, go to the subledger, we have reports there. We did have to build quite a few custom reports just to help pull the data together. We're using a lot of descriptive flex fields that don't transfer from AP into GL, which has been a challenge. So we are still building more reports. But it has been definitely an ongoing change management effort, and we're still working through it. Users are slowly getting there, but where they have feet in both places, it's really awkward right now. We're definitely not at that end state where we're seeing that, you know, what's our motto, our vision again?
Timely access.
Timely access.
I helped write that, and I can't remember it.
I think too, Cynde, you and your team really always acknowledge the pain of the living in two worlds,
Yes.
and then find efficiencies. Like, I know you talk, I've heard you say it so many times, use Account Inspector. I have no idea what that is, but you tell people all the time, and I've actually heard other people in calls now say, oh, I did that, that was really cool. So. Yep. I think leveraging and repeating those, and you've got some good champions in departments who are helping to convey that, but it does continue.
And we are trying to push people away from just, we don't want to rebuild the reports we had before, and we have rebuilt some of them to a point, because the custom ones weren't giving, or the seated ones weren't giving us what we needed. But we have also been trying to push people towards the inquiry tools that are available. There's lots of opportunities through the manage invoices and manage journal screens. But the account inspector and the account monitor, I love them. I use the account inspector all the time. We actually had to use that to help our controller's office do some of their management letters from the auditors this year to help them get all the departments sorted out. We've trained people on it, but sometimes it doesn't matter how much you train people, they just don't go to it because it's different and they don't like it yet. They'll get to where I'm at someday.
I would say, just to add to that quickly in case there's more, resist that urge to automatically recreate what you had in the past. It's a lot of short-term pain, but you will never succeed in your transformation if you just keep recreating it, because people aren't going to say, wake up one morning and say, I'm not going to use this anymore, let's transform. You really have to nudge them along the path. It's essential. I had a discussion with the auditor just the other day, and they said, well, we couldn't get this report. And I said, no, and you're not going to. But there's other ways to get the information you need. You tell us what you need, and we'll tell you how to get it.
And if we really can't get it, then we can build something. But that's kind of the last result, right?
Other questions? Oh, one here, and then we've got one over there.
Since Oracle is so futuristic and cutting edge, moving to the cloud, it's not always synonymous with government agencies, right? So I wondered if you could speak to the personnel challenges you have in migrating towards something so futuristic when dealing with personnel of a certain skill set. And that it's harder to bring them along to something completely new and innovative.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because Dave alluded to some of the challenges for our end users with some of the, we can't fix that problem right away, but we're also working with our technology folks who don't do the same job day to day anymore. They now have to be on the phone with Oracle managing a service request or working through an issue to try and do that. The Government of New Brunswick did adopt a cloud-first policy for new procurements of any technology. So we are able to leverage that as sometimes the stick if you need, but we've actually actively launched working through the bumps of Fusion campaign really with our stakeholders, because the transition to cloud for them has been has been hard. It's been a difficult experience in not having the control of the information, being able to build exactly what they want, to tap their coworker who sits next door and say, I need this report, as Cynde was saying, or I can't find this information, can you find it for me? So it's something we continue to work and talk to other public sector groups who have gone to a cloud environment on how we can improve in setting those expectations for our technical and our business folks as they make that transformation. We haven't hit the magic recipe yet, but we're working on it and happy to, if anyone has any other tips, happy to take them from you folks as well.
Right, we've got about 30 seconds, so we've got one more over here.
All right, quick one from me then. Yeah, really great story, thank you for that. Be interested to hear a bit about your governance on change control. So did you have a design authority which brought that rigor around standardization of processes and data? Secondly, did you introduce an enterprise architecture framework to support data domains and business and technology to keep it holistically transformational?
Really, the governance was the clerk who's in charge of all things government and the civil service went out to the deputy ministers and said, this is what we're doing. This is part of your job now, is supporting this across the organization. We had directive to transform directly from the Premier and Cabinet. So we do have, as Mallory said, we do have a pretty significant stick. As far as the enterprise architecture, we're not there yet. We're still working on it. We're aware that we have to get better at that, but we do have the support from the very highest levels, both of the civil service and the political side. So to me, that was essential.
And we do have a change control board that is made up of high-level officials in government, so they are the ones who have to work across Adrienne's HR and payroll, Cynde's finance, and prioritize what's important for the enterprise as a whole, not just their specific work stream.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here today with us. Congratulations on your successful transformation. We are excited to see what happens over the next year. And thank you again, Dave, Cynde, Adrienne, and Mallory.
Thank you all for sharing it.